Des, so great to have you on the podcast here today. Excited to dive in. First question to kick things off here. Would really love to hear, Intercom has embraced an AI first approach with its customer service platform. How did you and the team decide that this was the future direction for Intercom? And then what were some of the challenges to making Intercom AI native?
Sure. The first challenge or moment of it all going down was the minute or like the hours within which ChatGPT launched, which I think was like November 30th, 2021, maybe. Um, and really what happened was we all kind of played with it. I remember I got a text from Kieran, who's one of my co-founders. He was like, dude, have you seen this thing? It's pretty cool. I played with it a bit. We were busy chatting on Slack. People were posting screenshots of like, the usual sort of jaw. Like now we take it all for granted, but at the time, jaw dropping outcomes. I messaged our CEO Owen to say like, hey, if we think we need to have a look at this pretty quickly. We kind of spoke all through the weekend and then basically got to work on Monday planning what would be our first release, which was just a set of human augmentation features in our inbox. But it was just so quick. And I think we got a big splash with that because there were a lot of useful features like automatically summarizing a conversation or like making it expanding upon a reply to a customer. Intercom is a customer support platform for those who don't know. So we were applying AI through the entirety of how you support customers. And we got so much attention, love and buzz and interaction and adoption for those features. We immediately became, well, can we actually automate whole chunks of support so that support starts with an AI-powered chatbot? Effectively, think of it like ChatGPT, but for your customer support. And at the time, GPT 3.5 was what was available. Once 4 came, which I think was like February, I think we got a developer preview. We realized that it crossed some like perceptual chasm, and we were now like, this thing is definitely going to do a really good job with tier 1 Q&A powered support. So we got to work building Finn. Finn went live. It's been live in the market for a year and a bit, and I think it's powered like maybe 15 million answers at this stage. Most of you have probably seen or know the Intercom Messenger. It sits in the bottom right hand corner, and now Finn sits inside that. So that was how quickly we reacted. And then the pivot to go to becoming AI native was really just going back. I think a lot of companies stop too early in this journey. They say, where can we sprinkle in a little bit of like salt and pepper like AI as a condiment to our product? I think you actually have to ask yourself the deeper question, which is, now that all of these capabilities exist, we can infer, deduce, answer, summarize, converse, detect, etc. Now that all those things exist and the software can do them in a probabilistic way with like reasonably high performance thresholds, how would your product look? It probably would look wildly different to what you've built historically. So seeing so many things change in that world. Every moment where you'd ask a user to do some work, you have to think, well, could AI do the work for them? You have to reconsider entire workflows start to finish. And I think there's a journey. I often say you go from like, we'll do a simple task to let's try and do a workflow to like where I think we all need to get to is like, let's try to automate work and like realize this vision that people have of, you've probably heard the phrase, we've gone from software as a service to service as a software. Like, I think that's what has to happen. Like customer service becomes software. And so we've been working towards that vision, our vision of an AI first platform. We're kind of all parties in the customer support conversation, whether it's the manager, the representative, or the end user, they all turn to AI first to resolve their problem. And should AI not be capable, because again, these things are probabilistic, they don't get 100% most of the time, we'll kind of fail up the chain, if you like, right? The agent hands over to the human. If the human can't do it, hands over to the manager, and so on and so forth.
So this is not just because you're on either, but when I've gone on sites and they have Finn deployed, usually my frustration is with these automated platforms, I don't get my answer. That's not the case with Finn. So clearly, you guys have put a lot of work into it. And then I read somewhere that Finn can resolve up to 50% of customer queries. So what do you think the next big step in AI-driven customer support looks like? And I guess, how do you balance the need for human touch still when when continuing to grow the AI piece?
Yeah, good questions. So I'll take the second one first. Is just, I think until you believe, like, there are a lot of what I would call like bot only products out there, where they assume that, like, I think we all can have kind of line of sight to say, if we're currently at 50 and I think we're probably best in class, everyone has line of sight to 60, 70, 75, 80, but we all know that we're not going to 100 in the next couple of years, for all likely inbound queries. To be clear, some like smarty pants will be like, "Ooh, I can get 100%," but like in general, a credible organization will not get 100% if it's all frontline support queries answered. There will be weird stuff. There is always weird stuff. Uh, so given that you can't get to 100, it makes sense to invest an awful lot into the symbiotic relationship between the humans and the bots, basically. So we put a lot of work into how the handover works. If Finn doesn't know the answer, it doesn't fuss around and try and like force feed you down an IVR tree like a shitty phone support thing would or whatever. It knows when it doesn't know, and it knows when you're getting frustrated, and it knows when it's really in an area of extreme uncertainty, and it'll be like, "Yo, I'm tapped out. Can I hand you over to an agent?" And you can say yes, and then you can do things like, "Hey, how about you just write up a summary of your query, and I'll get someone to call you back or email you back, or do you want to? I have somebody live. If you want to talk right now, we can do it." But like, perfecting that handover is really important to not frustrate the shit out of people, and that's why, like, the Jared who like has experienced this doesn't hate the bot because it hasn't annoyed you enough, because we've spent a lot of time making sure it doesn't hallucinate and it knows when it doesn't know and it hands over. To the question of like where to from here, I think in general in AI, if I was to make a broader sort of landscape point, we're seeing a lot of these features emerge, whether it's in like software design or like legal stuff like Harvey, or whether it's in medical or whatever, where they're basically saying like, we are this, we've identified one specific workflow, like let's just say it's Q&A, for like support, and we've nailed it, and like that is really really valuable, but it's not the full job. And oftentimes the full job is things in support. It might be like, go and file a bug, like go into GitHub, create an issue, attach the customer conversation, jump into a Slack channel, ping the engineering lead who's attached to this area of the product and let them know. None of that's actually head scratching, right? Like, AI can detect all those things. It can look up APIs, who owns this part of the product and all that sort of stuff, right? So I think what we'll see over the next couple of years, and we'll be speaking more about this at an event soon, but what we'll see over the next couple of years is a maturing of the platform, in that we'll add all of the extra, I think, like grunt work that has to happen for a job to take place. So to give you a software issue, like a software example, so everyone's going nuts over, say, Cursor right now, or Devon, or using Claude to help them code. The next version of that might look like deploying it to Amazon, creating issues, assigning, like load balancing, whatever, like all of the other stuff that happens around that isn't the magic of writing the code, still needs to happen too. So I think that you might see like that, take that type of idea, which is not just nailing the core task, but nailing the ancillary tasks so that it is properly owned start to finish, is the thing. Like, no one would celebrate a genius engineer if they walked in here and could only write code at their desktop and could never make it go live. We'd be like, it's a bit inconvenient that they never managed to learn the rest of the software development stack, including testing and including all of the other stuff, right? Similarly, I don't think we'll accept that of our AI agents in the future, whether they're helping us code or doing our customer support for us. We will want them to like read the docs about the product that's just about to launch so that they can answer the questions. And if they can't find an answer, we want them to ping the PM who worked on the feature and get the answer, and then update the docs with the answer. All the stuff that humans do. So I just think that type of maturity, I think that we'll see that happen to a lot of the platforms that have emerged here. Separately, I think a lot of the novelty, gimmicky, prototypey AI things will die over next year. And I think the things that emerge as the super successes will be the ones who saw the complete platform play and actually solved the problem meaningfully from the ground up.
Well, I'll tell you, we need Google to deploy Intercom across everything they have, because I've had, we talk about those head banging on a desk type moments, right? What they kind of do with and this is probably the negative experience people have with these customer support tools, not yours,
Mhm.
but the time I do need a human, right? I'm at my like boiling point.
Mm-hmm.
It's try this article. Does this article
Yep.
work? No. Okay. What about this one? And it just then it starts recommending stuff that is not even relevant. And
Yeah.
there's no better way to piss someone off than give them something that's irrelevant at that point,
It
right?
gets even worse. And then if you get through to the human, it's this absolute amnesia because the human's like, hey, Jared, what's your issue today? And you're like, dude, I just typed the issue 27 damn times. Like, it's the whole thing. You have to pay so much attention to the actual humanity of doing customer service in order to make sure that you can replicate the pieces of it and not really lose anything. Calling you by your name is important. Remembering your issue is important. Understanding the difference between an urgent thing that just needs an answer versus something where Jared's probably going to be patient and say, "Hey, I'm going to go get this thing to happen, and we'll mail you when it's done." Like understanding that. Like I have a whole taxonomy of different types of support that we talk about. Like it can be urgent or casual. It can be like high pri or it can be like just a random query. Like there's so many different ways you have to understand how support conversations happen, and intuitively humans get most of that, and then they get trained on site for the rest of it. And it's no different with bots, right? Like you train and you tune and you give them access to knowledge and you give them policies to follow and you explain to them what to do when they don't know. And like the mature bots, like dare I say, like Finn or whatever, you'll be able to do all of that with it and actually deliver like a remarkably good experience that really frees up the human support agents for the issues when you are, as you said, like boiling over, and the person you're speaking to this time will not be like frustrated. Like the support rep won't be overburdened. They'll actually have time. They'll have been handed a nice summary of the case before it got to them. They'll be able to talk to you straight away. They can probably jump on a call because it's more because they have like the efficiency of the org is better, so they have the time. So what we see a lot when people deploy Fin genuinely is response times go down because the bot types really fast. But also, human satisfaction goes up because they have all this extra time to actually really use their humanity to solve the issue. They're not overburdened by a ticket counter or anything like that.
Yeah, it's well, I guess so. Let's talk a little bit about one of the concerns everyone always has with AI is trust.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you talk me through how you build and maintain trust with users when you're deploying an AI-driven solution? I mean, I guess particularly when the AI starts making decisions traditionally handled by human agents, how do you still build trust there?
Yes, so we talk about it as like trust and control together. So control meaning can you instruct it, and then trust meaning do you believe it'll definitely follow your instructions. Um, in general, like what you'll find is a lot of the prototypey 2022, 2023 era bots. They were they look great, were coded in a weekend, and they would hallucinate worse than like the most extreme Burning Man ayahuasca sort of rogue. And the reason for that is that the AI is the all the large language models are like really sort of hardwired to try and please you and to try and give you an answer. We put a phenomenal amount of work into not doing that. So generally speaking, the RAG engine of Fin is something like here's a question, find all the stuff that you should be relevant to this from all the different articles, and then given all of those articles, do your best to answer this question. Now, the next part of it is generally speaking, don't make shit up. Make sure every fact you use is found from somewhere. Make sure that you actually have like an epistemological basis for what you're saying. So like, everything you're saying should be tied to something that you didn't invent. You should know where it came from and answer the question as best as you can, and then react to what the user behaves like after they. So if they say no, like let's roll it again, but like let's see what else we can do for them, including failing over to a human. There's so much work we do when we compare either our bot with our competitors, or when they say like GPT 4.0 drops or something like that. We do a lot of work to sort of torture test the performance of the bot in a whole suite of different scenarios. Like the obvious ones are like, here's a doc that says how to reset a password. Here's a question saying, how do I reset my password? Right. That's like everyone scores 10 out of 10 on that one. Uh, the interesting thing about people trying to like evaluate a chatbot is that that's usually the test they do. It'd be like me saying, this is Albert Einstein. He's really good at maths. And someone goes, I don't believe it. Einstein, what's 5 times 6? Right. He's going to get that answer right. That's not why he's Albert Einstein. Okay. Um, The challenging questions are when you ask things that are like just on the edge of documented. So like you've explained how to reset a Wi-Fi password on this new type of phone, but you haven't said what to do when airplane mode is on. And or something like that, right? It's like when you're just on the edge of something that is there, does it make up the rest of the answer? Does it fluke it? Does it get it right for the right reason? If you run your 10 hardest questions through it, how does it handle those? Hardest meaning the ones that your human agents spend the most time on. If you ask the bot, hey, would you recommend your competitor? And see if it does it. If you ask it, like, is the current president of Brazil doing a good job? And see, does it take a political opinion? A human agent wouldn't. A human agent would say, sorry, mate, you're actually through to the Acme support line. I don't know why you're asking me these questions. You see what these bots will do. Like, so we spend so much time keeping it on topic, making sure it has a strong basis for all of its knowledge, making sure that it is confirming within itself that it knows it's answering a question, versus sometimes it will know that this is probably helpful but might not be the complete story, and how you present those answers are different. So that's everything we do around trust, so that we really care deeply about not making shit up, because support agents don't do that, bots do. And if you just kind of roll out an untrained bot to the world, you're going to get a lot of bad answers that you won't know about, because your customers will take the answer, try to apply it, and give up and quit. And then the control piece is just, most companies have stated policies around everything. Like, when do they do a refund? How do they speak? How do they speak to certain people? Do they talk to like premium customers different to free? You want to be able to make sure, if that's how your support team works, that's how your agents need to work as well. So you need to like make sure that you have a lot of control on how all of that will play out too.
Yeah, I remember there was someone that maybe deployed something in the early days of ChatGPT on their it was on their car
Hmm.
site, and someone was able to like buy a car for a lower
Yeah,
price because they were able to have the AI bot break the rules because there wasn't a mechanism in place, right? That like,
yeah,
if this is my final offer and you must accept it, okay, right? Uh,
yeah.
and it's but like that, there's growing pains like that that are bound to happen in the
Of
early
course.
days, and that was actually probably not a bad situation for that car company because they got so much press out of it though,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so, but what my next kind of question here as we start to wrap up is, you know, other than the space that you're in today, right? Other than customer support, which obviously AI is rapidly evolving it. What other industries do you believe are next in line for AI driven disruption? And I guess how should they compare?
Yeah, I think software engineering will be the one that gets hit hardest and hit heaviest first. Like everyone, like obviously, I believe customer support is the most near term in the kill zone or whatever. But I think there's most ROI to be had, basically massively reducing the cost of building software. That doesn't mean that all the engineers go out of become out of work or whatever. I don't necessarily think that that's true, but I think you're going to see like the cost of building a bespoke connector that connects such and such a tool to such and such another tool, when you've got a well-defined spec for both, gets a lot closer to zero in a world where you've seen like tools like Devon or Cursor. You just say, hey, read this, read that, write me something that connects the two. So I think like integrations and all that sort of stuff will really get a lot easier. So I really am excited for like, whilst maybe I'll say it this way, it's not that I'm excited for AI driven software development. What I'm excited about is a world where software development is extremely democratized and can be used in loads of places. Because if you think about every piece of shit software you have to use in this world, whether it's like some internal government tax thing or like some messy app that was built once 20 years ago and for some reason it still works. um, I think a lot of that will get a lot cheaper to replace. And I think the world, just because given like most of our world these days, most of us are working, we just spend our whole time exposed to software on screens doing things. I just think the general standard will get a lot better. So that's one area I'm really excited about. There's a couple others. Like one is like there are definitely jobs out there where an extreme amount of research is necessary, and in fact, the more research you do, the better you do your job. To give you like some random examples, then, if there's an interesting dispute about a property transfer somewhere in North America, there are probably millions of precedents that you could cite that no human could ever get through to understand exactly what way to make a case for or against such a transaction. And you hire teams and they hire teams and people just like honestly scrape and grep and search and and you kind of get what you get. It's a different world when either an LLM has been trained on all that, or it's just able to drink it all in some sort of RAG format in a meaningfully thorough way. And that's just a random, boring property transaction. Who gives a shit? What if I said to you as a type of cancer diagnosis based on a screening and based on an X-ray and based on like some sort of blood work or whatever? Well, imagine you could tap into every single application, every single incident that has ever happened of that type of cancer or of that type of X-ray or that type of blood work, and find all of the like probabilistic traits, prognosis, etc., and like the treatments, whether they be therapeutics or preventatives or whatever. Like all of that is like, again, if you go to a doctor, I don't mean to describe this too extreme, but like your limits are their limits in terms of how much time they can spend trying to work this out for you, how much knowledge they have, how much they have access to, etc. I think when you give them some sort of super tool that can do exhaustive research across like millions or possibly just every single case in history ever, I think their ability to find needles in haystacks becomes substantial, and sometimes that's what you need. And I think that will potentially change the world of medicine and just human health and longevity, and reduce suffering and all that. So like they're the things that I think are like the broader impact stuff that we'll see. Like just and like that research example, law shit's boring, medical stuff's inspiring, but like there's a lot of that type of stuff, right? Like the same principle applied in loads of different domains will just have like just I think groundbreaking transformation. The only other area I say is just I do think the nature of education is going to change, and I don't know how that plays out. I really don't. Like I often think if you like, take a computer as a metaphor, half of education is about like, clocking your CPU and making you really fast at deductive reasoning and thinking and talking and concluding and stuff. And a lot of it's just about access to knowledge. Like, hey, when was the Constitution signed or whatever, right? I think that the latter becomes even less relevant. Like if Google took one lump of that away or Wikipedia did, I think this is another lump. But I do wonder, what does education look like when everyone can get a CPU to do their thinking for them? We still need people, I think, to think fast and merge thoughts and synthesize ideas from different domains. And it's hard to do that if they're not already in your brain. So I don't know. I honestly don't know how education plays out in this. And I say that as somebody who's a lot of passion for the area. It's not obvious to me that it's going to be as good as maybe what might happen in medicine or whatever.
What's interesting is obviously the education space has not really changed much.
No. Well, the textbook prices have gone up, I think.
Yes, that's the biggest change, right? But maybe it'll actually take this like how AI has evolved over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years to finally change how it's done. We just interviewed. We recently had on the guest from the CEO of Synthesia.
Cool.
The avatars, right?
Yeah.
And I think with education, for that, like, what if you could have the best instructors that are now able to share their knowledge, and it's still them, but maybe they only had a time to write a really good lesson plan. They couldn't actually record all the footage, and you can play some of that. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes. And then going back to, I just want to comment on one thing you said earlier, like cursor and stuff. I have started messing around with that. It is, I think in the past you had to consider, even more so for like integrations, you had to consider, do we have time to like create this integration? I think now everyone's going to have all the integration. Like if it's that much faster to implement them, we'll see a lot more integrated, which is good for all of us, right? The more stuff's integrated, it definitely helps us. I want to ask you last question as we wrap up here. What's something you can laugh about now, but in the early days made you want to cry?
In the early days of Intercom or AI?
Intercom.
Oh,
people can't give me just one. They're like, there's so many, but
yeah, I mean, God, there are like, I mean, well, we once hired a really good guy to work in customer support. His name was Hung, and a customer wrote in to say, here, I've got a weird bug. When I send a message, Intercom has this feature where you can send messages to your customers. I tried to send a mail to one user, and for some reason, it went to all my users. I only have 17 users. It was supposed to go to one. It went to 17. And Hung just said, "Oh well, let me go and diagnose this." So we flicked over to the live instance of Intercom to see if this behavior was true. Attempted to send a message to himself, and in practice sent it to 650,000 people. And the message just said lol, 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 or lolul, actually, LOL, OOL. So every single person who's ever touched Intercom in its entire history got this email from Hung saying that. And that was where I learned the phrase "never test in production." Uh, but it was definitely. I was in San Francisco with him at the time. He was feeling so beat up, and like we had to like write an apology mail to explain that Intercom hadn't been hacked. That this was actually basically there was an actual issue with our select all feature or something like that. I can't even remember the nature of the specifics. Anyway, we look back. I think everyone looks back on it now and laughs. At the time, it wasn't a happy day. It wasn't a happy weekend even. But now I'm coming out the far side. I remember Owen commissioned like T-shirts that just said "lol" on it and stuff like that. We were able to turn it into a good buzz time afterwards. But yeah, at the time, it was definitely one of those. Would have rather this didn't happen. I think to make it even worse, I think it happened like during a board meeting or something like that.
Oh
Like
God.
it's just like worlds collide, everything went wrong.
It's but those situations, it almost becomes like a marketing campaign, because trust is such a big thing with working with companies. And when
Hmm.
you issue and say like, hey, something happened, we did this,
Yeah.
that just makes me build. It didn't hurt me, right? Like if you send me that message,
Hmm.
that doesn't hurt me. But I,
No.
I think the bulk of your users probably, it might have been that cry moment at the time, but probably appreciated the trust there.
I hope so. Certainly, if nothing else, it was good for a few viral moments on Twitter and some good memes. But yeah, how you react in those moments it does matter, including how we made him feel as well. We tried to like say, look, we've all, there's not one of us who hasn't screwed up, who hasn't brought Intercom down accidentally, etc. This is a weird one. It's an odd one, but like we'll learn the lesson and we'll move on.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Des, for joining us here today. Look forward to future conversations and wishing you the continued best of luck. You guys are crushing it, and thanks for all that you do.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation.